case, the story that just will not go away is the Brandon Aiyuk. Is he going to sign? Is he not going to sign? Is there drama here? Is there no drama here? I know Niner fans have gotten absolutely exhausted by it. It's kind of reminds me of the Trey Lance, Brock Purdy stuff from a couple years ago, but that was more nuanced and there was more angles there because we didn't know how the Niners felt about Trey. We didn't know how far Brock was coming along. We weren't sure how a competition between the two of them would look. And so there was a little bit more broad speculation. This is a little bit more tiresome because we got a receiver who's holding out. I think we got a floor in $26 million. We definitely have a ceiling in $35 million. And I think if you said to me, gun to your head, how's it going to all end? I think they'll compromise. I think, they got 6-7 weeks before camp starts and they've got a few months before the season starts. I think they'll find a compromise and probably get him signed to an AAV of about $29 million, and he'll get his guaranteed money. It'll be sizable and he'll be happy, I think, but I'm not 100% sure because it seems like at times it seems like there's no progress. And if there's any theme that's being reported from multiple sources, it's that there's no progress and that it's been kind of quiet and dormant as far as the talks. And now you're based in Dallas. I'm based here in the Bay Area. What are you hearing in the Midwest there or in the South about Aiyuk? You think he's going to, am I right in that they'll come to a compromise, or do you think this could be headed towards something more dramatic than just a compromise and he's there at training camp?
A few things here. I keep going back to the timeline of how this regime is operated, with Parag working on the contracts and being very bullish in these contract negotiations. John Lynch as general manager and Kyle Shanahan as head coach, who doesn't just have an X's and O's scheme, offensive philosophy type of input on this organization. He has a team building input as well. And when you think about the timeline of what we've seen in recent years, these contract negotiations, whether they involve drama, whether they get contentious, they last a long time for San Francisco. And we talked about this last week with you, myself, Damon Bruce, that the Niners kind of operate in we've always done it this way, so why change? And we made the argument they should change their philosophy on how they negotiate these contracts, because it's going to end up costing themselves some money. I think with this Brandon Aiyuk deal, to answer your question, I do think it gets done, but which side is going to compromise? The Niners have some leverage right now because they can say, if you don't want the deal that we're going to put on the table, that's fine. You can play under the fifth-year option, just north of $14 million. But keep in mind, we do have the right to franchise tag you after 2024 because we still believe we're going to field a competitive team. And then from Brandon Aiyuk and his agent Ryan Williams' point of view, they're looking at the wide receiver market this offseason, which has exploded multiple times. And if Justin Jefferson is getting 35 and CeeDee Lamb ends up getting 32 million, can Aiyuk say, I want 30? I think at the end of the day, as we approach training camp, which gets underway on July 23rd, that's the date to keep in mind here. Can the Niners go up $2 million from their $26 million per year offer? And can Aiyuk go down from 30, let's say, to 28? Can they find that middle ground and get a deal done at $28 million, which is still top 5 wide receiver money? Aiyuk would be paid more than Deebo Samuel. Obviously, the guaranteed money is going to play a huge role here, but the narratives that players don't care about AAV, I think it's ridiculous because bragging rights, competitiveness, players want to see how they stack up against their counterparts with what they're making per year. And as for that timeline that I mentioned, George Kittle back in 2020 did not sign until August 13th. There was some drama there because his agent had talked about the Valentine's Day massacre, and that was referencing the Niners deal after the Super Bowl loss to Kansas City. Following offseason, there was no drama with Fred Warner because he's just the ultimate team guy. He signed his deal on July 21st in 2021. With Deebo Samuel, he had the trade request. He utilized social media to try to up his leverage and to really generate some fan outrage to put pressure on the Niners organization. He was a hold-in at the start of training camp. He signed on July 31st in 2022. And then with Nick Bosa, there wasn't a lot of drama, but I think because of all of the money that was at play, because he got record amount of guaranteed dollars and AAV, that deal didn't get done until September 6th. And that was the Wednesday before the season opener. So I think that at some point, Aiyuk, Ryan Williams, and the Niners agreed to a deal. I hope there's no holdout, because I want to see this offense together with everybody collectively getting ready to chase a Super Bowl here in 2024. And my prediction, $28 million per year.
$28 million a year. You think, and you think it gets done. You know, here's the question though. It's like, I'm watching the Super Bowl the other day, Super Bowl 58. And this is the first time since, like, you know, I obviously I watched the Super Bowl. I came home, I watched it a couple times to, you know, do a little post game, whatever, or, you know, post week Super Bowl breakdown. But then, you know, I turned it off like everybody else, and I haven't watched it since. And it's improved my life not to have watched it a whole lot this offseason. But I did watch it the other day, and what jumped out to me was that not only do the Niners have, you know, obviously a top tier group of receivers in Deebo and Aiyuk and Jennings, but, you know, Chris Conley in the playoffs played a very large role for this team. He had a huge tackle in the Super Bowl on coverage, on a punt coverage situation, or it might have been kickoff coverage. He also, you know, made some big catches in the playoffs, including one in the Super Bowl. You know, it just seems to me that the Niners are just way too loaded off wide receiver wise. And it's like the part of me that makes me think that there may be a trade involving a wide receiver is just the fact that look at all the good wide receivers the 49ers will be cutting if they wind up not trading Deebo, not trading Aiyuk. You know, you got Deebo, Aiyuk, and Jennings. You got Pearsall. You got Cowing. Most teams go with 5. That's it. That means Chris Conley cut, Ronnie Bell cut, Tay Martin cut, Danny Gray cut.
Danny Gray, yeah. You
know, all these guys are cut, and Conley played a significant role on special teams and really looked good. And I'm just kind of wondered if is that are the Niners heading towards they're going to cut, you know, 5 receivers that wind up playing in the NFL this year? Or do you think there's a chance that maybe the 49ers, you know, are going to, in the 11th hour, pull a trade for, you know, sending one of their receivers elsewhere? I mean, there's an awful lot of speculation as to that. The Steeler people this guy Fittipaldo out of Pittsburgh seems to think that, you know, a 49er wide receiver is going to be playing for Mike Tomlin this year. I'm not sure why he has such belief. I don't know who his sources are. I don't know that much about him, but do you think that they're going to cut all these receivers, or do you think that they may actually wind up moving an Aiyuk or a Deebo, especially if Pearsall looks good in camp this summer?
That's why the draft strategy was so surprising to me. That's why the reach for Ricky Pearsall surprised me. You draft Pearsall at 31. I thought that he was a second-round prospect. He's somewhat of a limited athlete. There's no doubt to me it was a reach because he doesn't have the upside of an Adonai Mitchell or an Xavier Legette. He's an inside guy in my estimation, and the Niners took him in the first round. So you're thinking, did they draft Pearsall knowing that they're going to trade an Aiyuk or a Deebo? And then they go back to wide receiver a little bit later in the 4th round in Jacob Cowing, who is that shorter, shifty, make a man miss in a phone booth with my routes type of wide receiver who also operates out of the inside. And then they re-signed Jawan Jennings, who's an inside guy, not an outside guy. So what's to give here? I know that the Niners team building strategy this offseason has been, we were a little bit top heavy last year. A lot of premier players, lack some depth though. They address depth at defensive tackle. They address depth at cornerback in a big way. They address depth at wide receiver. And this is also why I keep bringing up, look, you aren't sure if the rookies are going to be ready right from the jump. And a Pearsall and a Cowing, is this a redshirt year? And then they'll have marquee roles once they master the scheme and get up to speed with the nuances of the NFL, the physicality, the speed of the NFL. And then they have big roles in 2025, which then means that the 49ers move on from a Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk, or Juwan Jennings. That was kind of my thought process going into the draft. And then they re-signed Juwan Jennings, and he's under contract for 2 more years. So there are going to be a lot of teams across the NFL that are going to be monitoring which wide receivers, which cornerbacks as well the Niners cut during 53-man roster cutdown day, because they're going to be able to get a good player right on the scrap heap who they're going to be able to sign through waivers. And I would not be shocked, just like you, if in the lead up to the season, the Niners see something from Pearsall in training camp, they see something from Cowing, and they say to themselves, we're comfortable with having those 2 rookies have roles within the offense. We know that we're going to be run heavy with Christian McCaffrey. We know what Juwan Jennings is going to be able to give us, and he can line up on the outside from time to time. We'll keep one of Deebo and Aiyuk. And for a team that maybe suffers an injury at the wide receiver position, then throughout training camp, they see that they're extremely light at the wide out spot, and they understand our offense is pretty stagnant. We need another playmaker at the wide receiver spot. Let's call up the Niners. Hey, can we revisit the Deebo trade or the Aiyuk trade? And what does desperation do? It ups the offer. So maybe around draft time and throughout points of this offseason, the Niners haven't gotten a good offer for Aiyuk or Deebo. But then you get closer to the year, there's an injury, there's subpar play at the wideout spot. Hey, we were going to give you a 4th-round pick for Deebo during the draft. Now we'll up it to a 3rd or a 2nd. We are giving you a 2nd for Aiyuk. Now we'll give you a 1st. And is that offer too good for the Niners to pass up on? Going back to what you said, it's going to come down to if these rookies, if they do make a move, if they can contribute right away in year 1.
And then the speculation too is like, okay, so if Aiyuk were to be dealt, and by the way, we've got people in the chat. One guy's like, Aiyuk to the Raiders is a rumor going around. Okay. And then Invader 49er says the Aiyuk trade train has left the station. And then we have this one from Strawberry Reacts. So Larry would rather have Conley than Aiyuk. No.
He never said that.
No. But I do see that there's real value in having Conley. And obviously nobody's trading for Conley where there's a trade market for Aiyuk, you would think.